Hello, hiya, hello and welcome. Xantip here, videos about guitars. Of course, there is Polish subtitles to this video, so click subtitles down below and you will know what I'm talking about if you don't understand English. But the whole video is in English because my guest today is Thomas Blug from Germany, and as far as he can speak English and I can speak English, he cannot speak Polish and I cannot speak German. Thomas Blug was this month in Warsaw. He was presenting his own signature guitars made by a company called Vintage. He was telling his story about those guitars, about his playing, about how he developed quite innovative amplifiers as well, and what is his story with collecting amplifiers, with collecting guitars and being a musician. He will present to you guitars that you will see very soon this month on the channel here tested, his signature instruments made by Vintage. As well, I'm hoping to test for you next year amplifiers and all the guitar units he is making. I didn't ask him one question, and there is a bit of this story which is not mentioned during the interview and the show. I didn't know about it. I found out about it after the show, so I will tell you a little bit of a secret at the end of the video, which was for me quite shocking, but from other hand, I've understandable as well. So let's listen to what Thomas Blug has to say, and I would like to thank a lot to Riff, to Salony Muzyczne Riff, musical saloons Riff in Warsaw and in whole Poland. I would like to thank you for inviting me there, for letting me having this opportunity to talk and listen and ask questions to such a guitar player and such a person in guitar world. Thanks a lot as well to all the people who came to this show and to all guitar maniacs. Thank you very much. Let's go to Warsaw.
You have questions, I have answers.
Exactly. You can have questions as well, of course, no worries. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Thomas Blug, straight out of Germany.
Yeah.
Composer, guitarist,
Amp designer.
amp designer, as well the owner of your own signature instrument, which we're gonna talk about as well in a minute. And the reason you are here is because we are in Warsaw, Riff Saloons, and you are promoting your own guitar. But my first question is, how the guitar, how was it? How did you start playing the guitar? Why guitar came to your life? You know, tell me the beginning.
Well, the beginning was, I was first a listener. You know, I was fascinated by rock music, and I was fascinated by the sound of the guitar. And this had nothing to do with playing the instrument, just by listening to the instrument. So my parents and the friends of my parents, they had record collections that I went through, and I enjoyed that music a lot more than that classical music. For instance, my dad is also into classical music, but I was never too heavy for me.
What artist we talking about? Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah, for me, with the rock guitar, I think Rolling Stones was my first. I was a fan of the Rolling Stones before I played anything, and then maybe even some blues players like Freddie, Albert, and B.B. King, the Three Kings, and I don't know what some Hank Marvin was also, because because my parents, they had kind of the music from the 60s, and so by hearing that music, that was kind of my socialization, so to speak. So this is with the music that I grew up listening to. Second phase was I picked up the instrument, and then I was more interested in you know, the players that were heroes like Richie Blackmore, which my parents never listened to.
How old were you? Sorry to jump into the word, but how old were you when you started?
Listening was about 10, 11, 12, and playing 12, 13 is where it started.
It's quite early, actually.
Yeah, whatever. But it hit me. It took half a year, maybe, or where I wasn't sure. It's just, you know, on and off with the guitar playing, and then there was a magic kind of moment, and it hit me. And the bug was biting me. So, and I was practicing like crazy.
Did you have any kind of teacher? Or are you like self-taught?
Mainly self-taught. I tried to get teachers, and I had one guy that was really good, but he had not much time, and so I didn't have regular lessons. I had 1 or 2 lessons with a guy, and then I tried to get a jazz teacher, and we had a mental conflict about he wanted to have me on an archtop, and I wanted to play the Stratocaster, and so we parted, and that was the end of my education. So the rest, basically, self-taught with bits and pieces. At school, I was choosing music as one of. We had the option of choosing more important topics at school for doing finals, and so I choose music, and I was the only in that very small class of 7 only, which was the smallest ever to exist. All the other were like the female violin players and a grand piano player.
Who you were the only one who was playing the guitar.
And not reading, or my reading sucks.
Oh, you mean like reading the notes and everything like that? So you don't know. Do you know the theory of the music?
I understand that, and I also understand the theory of reading, but I never practiced that way. My ears is my tool, and that helped me to survive also when I was in that class, because they could read super fast, but when we came to the more complex stuff like partiture reading, it's like they had to read from, and I could hear it. I could hear the chords.
And you could remember as well, probably. That's how we, who doesn't know the notes, are playing instruments. We just remember. We don't read. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you remember your first instrument? Like, was it acoustic? Was it electric? Do you still have it? Maybe.
No, I don't have it. I was given a nylon string acoustic guitar, but this was not what I was really interested, because I was listening to the rock music before, and being a kid that was actually I had built my own hi-fi system for home, because electronic was my first hobby.
Okay.
So I was having my stereo at home, and then I bought myself a pickup for the nylon string guitar and tried to make this an electric guitar, and it was horrible. But this was a great starting point to understand what not works. So that was like I started below zero. And then I found out, okay, if you want to play electric guitar, you buy a better electric guitar, not a nylon string guitar with a pickup. So then I had that, and then I built my first overdrive pedal, and of course with the stereo system and the wrong speakers, not even the guitar speaker, it sounded crap. And then I got a guitar speaker, and then I changed the EQ on the stereo system to match the guitar, and so I went.
So when you were like a teenager, you already started 2 ways of your guitar life: playing the instrument and making the amplifiers. What you're doing now. That's quite interesting, because I was to ask about it a little bit later when that started actually, and it's
It's still the same in my life. But I started with...
What's more important for you?
There's nothing more important. You know, balance is between two poles. And the one pole was always the electronic, and there were phases in my life where the electronic was like second, just because I was too busy doing the music. Now I'm probably more busy doing my amps and stuff like that. We can talk about this in 10 years' time, looking back what was happening, and I can look at my calendar and can see, oh, this was a year of more music. Or like last week, I had a tour of 10 days, non-stop touring music. Of course, I have 2 hours on stage and another 6 on the phone for my company. But I still, you know, do the gigs and enjoy the gigs and the audience and all that.
So what was the first electric then?
My first
Was it Stratocaster?
Yes, actually.
Are you in love with
Yeah,
do you play only Stratocasters?
I have other guitars as well, sure. But yeah, actually my first one was a Stratocaster, Japanese Aria Pro.
Oh, okay.
And after that Strat, my second electric was from the same company, a Les Paul, but I found out that I was a Strat kind of guy. And then Les Paul was out for decades. I bought a Les Paul just, I needed it for session work because when I was 17, very young, I was hired to play in the studio as a session musician, getting money.
Okay. You must have been good then.
Yeah, well, I practiced a lot and I had a good reputation. And a friend of mine who was working in the band, he was also working at a publisher for a music producer. And so he recommended me, and I was cheap and young. And the music they produced was not... in German, we call it Schlager music, like, you know, the very folky. And anyway, I could make it sound right because my ears were always... So they booked me and they kept on booking me. And I didn't even have a car by then. I had no car. You know, when I was 17, you know, I was not allowed to drive a car, so I always had to walk to the producer, or my mom had to drop me off, or my dad. And then the producer was driving with me to the studio. And
what, Stratocaster was the main gun for you there?
Yeah, and then I found out when I had the Strat in the studio, sometimes you need something else as well. And then I got like a Les Paul on top of that.
Don't you have a problem with this knob when you play in Strat?
No, I like it exactly how it is.
Okay.
It is, for me, it's perfect.
Because I cannot play Strat because of that. I always make it like, you know, down, 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 down. How do you manage with the knob?
Well, the thing is, all I do is I have that always connected here. So I can, while playing, I can adjust it. And when I do my soloing, I kind of play on 3, for instance, hit a note.
Then you boost it with the volume, okay.
Yeah, or I go back when I play chords. So, but this is, that's part of learning to play a Stratocaster.
I know, because for me it was like, you know, the last choice. For you it was the first choice. I was always Gibson guy. I was always into Super Strat when the knob is a little bit, you know, down on the guitar. When I pick up the Strat, I was like, oh God, the sound is changing. You know, why is it changing? And then I found out why vintage then.
Well, it goes back to a real funny story. When I was playing Frankfurt show, which I did for many, many, many years. Musikmesse, yeah. And I was demoing with my original 1961 Stratocaster, which back then was not as expensive as the guitars are today. So I was putting my original guitar on stage in the stand, and before my demo, I was having a quick pee at the toilet, and when I came back, the audience was already there, people waiting for me to play. So I jumped on stage, and my Strat was gone, and such a guitar without a label. There was just a plaster, like was there with no logo.
Okay.
And then the people were waiting, so I picked up that guitar, and then I said, okay, let's do it with this one then. And I played it, and during my first song, I could see Trevor Wilkinson waving with the real Strat. So, like, it's still here. I have been a good friend of Trevor Wilkinson for decades, and.
But did you know each other before,
before.
or was it? Oh, you know each other
No,
before.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so it wasn't like that he jumped in.
But he didn't tell me anything. So I came there, and he didn't tell me anything. So I saw that guitar with the wrong logo, and I played my first song with it, and I thought, it's okay. Of course, it's not my real 61, and my real 61 is still like the best 61 I have.
Is it the one from the videos where the whole fretboard is almost glossy, shiny, not because of your fingers?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me what was your first electric guitar. I think we just jumped out of this question in some way.
Well, my first electric was a Strat, the Aria Pro.
You did. Yeah. So when did you buy the real Fender then?
When I was 17.
Is it that one you have in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I bought it when I was 17 because I already did the session work, and in the studio I found out how. I had a real Fender Strat in the 80s, which was the worst Fender Strat ever built. And then a friend of mine is a guitar luthier, and he recommended to me to buy a Squier. You know, back then this was the GV series, Japan Vintage. Back then nobody knew it. It was 800 Deutschmarks, so it was not too expensive. But he said, this sounds better than the real Fender. So I used that Squier. And then I had another Squier because I made some money in the studio. And then I noticed that this was pretty good, but I had heroes like Gary Moore or Rory Gallagher, and I could hear, maybe it's better. I was not sure what it was. Of course it was the guitar, I thought. You know, but in the end, even Gary Moore could have played on my guitar sounding much better than I was. But I thought it must be the guitar. So this friend of mine, Michael Frank Braun, who finally ended up in the Fender custom shop. He moved from Germany, from my hometown, to North Germany, Hamburg, and then from Hamburg to the US to work for Fender.
Okay.
And he has done the Eric Johnson signature model and stuff like that. So very small world. But what he told me when I was age 17, you need a real old one to get better than the Japan Vintage. And this was just the time when he moved from my hometown Saarbrücken to Hamburg, when he was connected to a shop called Number One, and they were dealing with vintage instruments even back then. And so he had two guitars that I could choose from, and one of them was a 64 that I couldn't afford because it was previously owned by a celebrity owner, a German guitar player that was in a very famous band. And the other one was that white 61 Strat, which this is now a copy of. And I had no skills, 17. They asked for 3,200 Deutschmarks for it. The other one was 4,000, which was a lot of money for me. And so I thought, I'm a clever business guy. I make a final offer and said, if you sell it for me for 2,000, I just turned the two numbers around, that 2,300, and I'll take it right away. And the guy needed the money, so he said yes.
Okay.
So I bought my original 61 Strat for 2,300. Back then it would be at least 3,500-ish worth.
How much is it worth now?
Now I don't know, because it's not a clean one. It's probably worth
20,000 euros?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably. Also because I used it so much, and it's been recorded. It's been recorded so many times. It's
I don't mean even this particular guitar, but let's say the guitars from this year. They are something around like
61s go, when they are real collector grade, they go for 30. Yeah.
I think that's a good deal then. You know.
Yeah. I'm not complaining, but I was never after money. I was always into the instrument, and it was a guitar that was doing a better sound job, and therefore. So
you could hear the difference between those, let's say, very good instruments, which are very, people are looking for those JVs now, and they are like holy grail of the guitar. There was a huge difference between those instruments.
Well, huge is.
Where was the difference?
I always call this the twang, but it is. It's not a hollow twang. You know, some guitars, they have a snappiness, bing, 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 and they sound like thin. But if they have the precision in the tone, with a lot of twang, a lot of dynamic, and a lot of the tone is. I wouldn't say round. I would say that the treble and the bass and the mids are connected. So, and the vintage instruments, they have that, and that gives you some vintage instruments. Sorry, the good vintage instruments, so to speak. So, because when you play a guitar over years, it will change. Also, a new guitar will sound better, I believe, when you play it for a couple of years.
That's the thing that actually I don't believe.
You don't believe?
I don't. I got one guitar for 25 years,
and it's still
for me, it's still the same like it was.
Okay, I have now built some of the vintage guitars. I also have blue guitars made by Trevor for me at like a very high price point, and we do whatever we can. And I can tell you, when I have that guitar for a month, there's always, the first impression is a certain level, and the guitar, some guitars develop a lot if you know how to set them up correctly. If for instance the truss rod is not good adjusted, the guitar will always sound shit. So, but once, especially with a new guitar, you set the neck right. If that is done and the guitar is good, and then you play it, I can feel the improvement. Of course, it is a two-way street. It's like the guitar gets something, and since I get more comfortable with the guitar,
that's what I was to ask. Actually, isn't it like that?
It's both. It's never just one thing. You know, the whole.
But you get used to this instrument so much that you know more of it, and actually you can take out more of where you when you're playing it.
And I think I can prove that the guitar changes. I have done similar things with speakers. For instance, the more I play a speaker, the more it changes. It's easier to measure.
It's easier to measure, and it's easier to believe in some way, because you know it's not so solid. Speaker is not so solid.
Yeah, but we have, for instance, with my blue guitars, I bought 50 necks from Japan years ago, and we still haven't built 50 pieces. So I still have the old necks. I have some guitars built at the very beginning, and I have guitars built last week. Out of the same wood, from the same supplier, from the same delivery.
And very totally different instruments.
Totally different. Yeah, and the older ones are actually better, that have been played more. Now after 2014, I think I had the first one. You know, it's like almost 10 years.
Okay, there is one thing in your theory and my theory against your theory. My guitar isn't played for a long time.
Yeah, it needs...
It was played.
Are we ready?
Yep. very soon.
Are we gonna finish this after the show?
Yeah,
Do you
we
have
can. Yeah.
Okay, so let's jump to the show.
People that know me know that I am a fanatic when it comes to Stratocaster guitars. This is my best of album, and this is me with my white Strat that I bought when I was 17 years old. And how comes that somebody buys a 1961 Stratocaster when he was 17? And vintage guitars, I'm not talking about a brand, I'm talking about the old instruments were not even cool back then. When I was a teenager, last century, I'm old, vintage. The guitar from 1961 was not the guitar that people wanted to play. People wanted to play the Steve Vai, Joe Satriani model, 80s. We're talking 80s. Now we are back to the 80s with pink and yellow and very shrill colors. And I had a white Strat which is kind of boring with single coil pickups. But I knew why I bought the guitar, because I had a Fender Stratocaster which was the worst Fender ever built. This was back in the 80s when Fender had the worst lacquer this thick, heavy like shit. 3-point connection on the back plate. My neck was literally moving like, and then I had to get it in place again because it was not really tight connection. Anyway, at a very young age, I was already working in the studio, more or less by accident, because I was young and I was cheap. And I had somebody in my band that was recommending me to a producer. So I got hired to play in the studio. And in the studio, I could hear the difference between a shitty Fender Stratocaster. Then I bought a Squier. Back in the 1980s, they came with the Squier guitars. And these guitars were manufactured due to the old school vintage specs. And that was the next step up from the wheel Fender. So Squier now is a cheaper value brand. But back in the 80s, the GV series, which was manufactured in Japan, was better. So I had one of those. And in the studio I could hear, it's good, but my heroes, Rory Gallagher, Gary Moore, they sounded still better than myself. And I'm not sure if it was me, so it must have been their guitars. And then I checked out, they all play really old vintage guitars. So I asked a friend of mine who was a guitar luthier, and he said, you have to buy a real vintage old guitar. At the age of 17, I've done that. And I still use that guitar every day. It's my main guitar. The vintage signature models, this is a different story. I have been working in the industry of musical instruments for a very long time. I am also an amp manufacturer myself. I design amplifiers, so I understand a little bit about electronics. And I'm a musician. I understand about playing. And when I met a guy called Trevor Wilkinson, I found somebody who has a lot of knowledge. He was into all the details when I talked with him about guitars. And Trevor did the pickups, did the hardware, and he was my man. So the brand Vintage did not even exist when I met Trevor Wilkinson.
But what happened was at one show at Frankfurt Music Messe, was a big show. I had my demo with my real original 61 Stratocaster, like over there. I went for a quick pee, just like now. Came back, people were waiting, just like you. And maybe even more people. And then it was not my guitar, but something that looked like my guitar. Something like that. And there was no logo, there was a plaster, like if you put a plaster on your hand over the logo. And people were waiting, and my Strat, my original old 61 was gone. So, okay, I thought I took the guitar and I played my first song. And then around the corner I could see Trevor Wilkinson waving with my real guitar. It was still there. And after the show, we started to talk about what is this all about? And then he said he was listening to everything we were discussing in the past. And he said, yeah, I think I do you a guitar. And then it's like, do I really want to do that? And then I said, hey, Trev, if I do it, I have my guitar. I don't need another guitar. If we do it, we have to have all my features 100% my way, because when I played it, I could tell it's okay, but it's not 100% what I want. My guitar has been modified with a few special features. So what happened is, I said, Trev, there's two choices, no, and if yes, I want treble bleed, dummy coil, all the things that I want to make it really good for the way I play my original guitar. So it's actually a guitar that I really use. And okay, here we go. Let's hello. Yeah. So, this guitar is, I don't know, it's affordable. I don't know the price. Oh, there's no price. Priceless. The point is, as you can see, I can instantly do my thing. And I don't have to bring my original old Fender 1961 Stratocaster, and it stays in Germany, it stays with me in my car, but I don't take it on airplanes anymore because I have been there, being like to Japan, and then you cannot take this on board, and it's going like, now I have to repack it, and maybe I never see it again. So such guitar simply works. Or what happened this summer is I'm living pretty close to the French border in Germany, and there was a French guitar festival, and they invited me to play over there. And I was actually planned to be there on the Sunday with my band, but Saturday I got a phone call. Our French guitar hero is not coming. Can you come? Okay. So I came there, I brought my real 61 Strat, I brought my amp, everything. I joined in with the band, we had fun, all nice concert. After that, I went back home and left my amplifier, but I took my precious 61 Stratocaster with me home. Okay, the next day, I was working Sunday in the morning in my company, and then I thought, oh, it's getting late. Let's go for the French festival. Now it's concert time. And I came to the concert, I saw my band, and I go, did I bring my guitar? Or when I came here, did I have my guitar with me? And they said, no. Oh. I had no guitar. So my amp was still there, but I had no guitar. And then I go, scheiße. And I was lucky because there was a French music store that had exactly one of these. So I played that, and I could do my full concert on a vintage guitar. So after the first song, nobody noticed any difference anyhow, because then it's all music. Okay? So, that guitar actually is here from the shop. I didn't bring any of these, so they are here from the shop. I just tried to set them up, and I have not finished yet. This was what I can tell. The string action is a little bit too low. On the other one, it's correct, but this... Anyway, but it's... Now, let me explain why this and this guitar, which are electrically the same, let me explain what's going on here. Maybe I start with the white one, okay? Because my history with vintage also started with a white one. Actually, we can talk about all that setup things as well, but maybe first the guitar. This guitar has a few features that I modded on my original 61 Stratocaster because I wanted those features as a player. Today, if you have a 1961 Stratocaster, you would not change much on it. Why? Because then it loses value. It's like you change something and 500 euros less. No? When I was a teenager, I did anything without asking. Luckily, I didn't put humbuckers in there. So my original guitar is still pretty original with a few changes. So, when everything is kind of turned up all the way, this sounds, and does the job of a Stratocaster. There is the classic way of a bridge pickup. See, dead, working. Maybe you can hear that this bridge pickup is having twang, but it's not, it is aggressive, but not unpleasant aggressive. And I call this the O factor, O. When I play the low E string, I can hear O. And some other Stratocasters, they sound, but they have no O. And the bigger the O, the foundation, the more I can handle aggressive notes, because there is a strong body underneath, and that's nice. So this comes from my original guitar as one of the factors that I really think is good at the original guitar that I wanted to keep. And people sometimes ask me, do you play humbuckers? Especially when I play with a Strat or with such a guitar with high gain. It is not, it sounds really fat because of that O. Let me show you. So, single coils, okay? The trick is not more output. Amplifier can, or pedal can give you overdrive as much as you like, too much. But the tone, the foundation of the pickup of the guitar is big, And that's one thing. And here comes my feature, what we call the Backer switch. Well, Backer comes from humbucker. It is actually not a humbucker. It is there's the pickup, and the pickup has magnets and a coil. The magnets pick up the vibration of the metal strings. And the magnetic field with the coil transports this vibration to the output, to the amp, and this is what we hear. Okay, when you have a humbucker, you have like two of these, and one of them is reverse. What happens is the vibration is coming to two coils, and because one coil is reversed, the noise is less. Let me hear. It sometimes depends a little bit on the room, but it's like what I have done with this guitar is I have an extra coil without magnets, so it's not more output, but it's just a coil that gets the magnetic noise in the room and cancels it, or reduces the magnetic noise from the room. And it helps me when I play overdrive. There is no humbucker in the way that it's getting more output and bigger. No, there's a tiny little difference that we can hear, and I think we hear it best when I play clean. So this is bypass when it's in. So on bypass, on, I think it's a touch less bright. And for me, that's even good, because when I play in overdrive mode, that extra brightness is reduced with reducing the hum. My style, my signature model comes handy for what I do. Other people have other styles, other requests. That's what I like. And it makes sense. So, that's the Backer switch. The other thing is I have a treble bleed on the volume control. What is a treble bleed? Well, for the musician, the treble bleed is when I have the volume down, I keep the high end. I show you especially, so this is on 10, 7, 4, 3, sounds almost the same. When I use overdrive, it's even more dramatic. Overdrive. So for me, I can use this guitar with my overdrive channel and even play clean. Now I'm on 3. 5, 10. No? This makes my guitar more flexible. You can do this to any of your guitars, but you have to learn how to use this. I learned that from Richie Blackmore, because he played like... For me, very important in music. Also very handy when I'm on stage because I don't have my channel switch or my overdrive pedal always close to me. So when I can go on this side of the stage and I just... Treble bleed. Thank you. So, very easy trick, but essential. And that's the good thing, some things don't need to be expensive. I know there's a whole industry and the whole marketing world out there that tries to make you have to have the real deal, anything else is shit. And I think there is always an alternative. It's, of course, if you have the best, and there is something about it, but I would never play with €100,000 Les Paul on stage. The moment you go with this on stage and knock it to your neighbor bass player, there's the whole money of the year is gone. You know, you cannot play enough concerts to ever make this kind of money back. So, therefore, such an instrument, which I'm a fan of Relict, and I actually taught the vintage guys to do Relict. At the beginning, they were not convinced. I had to convince them, and this was even pre-Fender Relicts. Fender was still doing the standard glossy guitars back in the days. I just was the guy with the old Strat, with the marks, because I played it all the time. And the trend kind of was on the edge of starting. And I told Trevor and Vintage, hey guys, if you do a guitar with the relic, like that is affordable, that is cool, that's something I want to be part of. And that's why I do this. Yeah, good. And the last thing, which is also in between bullshit and important, is the missing screw here. Because on my original Strat, I was always trying to optimize. I was trying to get it in tune. I was set up job. Everything should be perfect so it stays in tune. And I found that on my original Strat, that third screw was having contact in a not so good way with the plate. So I simply took it off, didn't think about it. And Trevor Wilkinson was the first one that noticed, oh, where's the screw? What's wrong here? And said, I took it off and it was shit. And then he said, but when we do the guitar for you, you have to live with having no screw here. So for him, this was an important detail. In this guitar, it would actually work with a screw. On the original Strat, it was a problem for some reason. So maybe it was the wrong screw, maybe it was slightly not straight or whatever. So I took it off, and now I'm the guy without the screw. It works, simple as that. And this is actually how the guitar looked when we started that 10, 15 years ago. It's quite a while when we did the vintage guitar together. By now, my real guitar, you can see it on the internet. It's first dirty because I didn't clean it for the last 5 years. People always write comments. Please, clean the guitar. And it's like, I've done this in the past, but it's like, maybe not. for two reasons. One is, I think there is nobody else with such a dirty guitar like mine. That's unique. And that's something I learned also from Richie Blackmore, because he had a special thing on his headstock. And in an interview, the interviewer asked him, hey, Richie, what is this special thing here? And he said, it's something that people talk about. So not cleaning the guitar is like the missing screw. I was lazy not cleaning the guitar for a while, and then I thought, okay, now people talk about it. It's the best thing you can do in the internet. Maybe I should make macro with the living creatures.
I think we should ask Vintage to make you another one with the dirt, with some kind of veneer on it, so it's always there. No one can clean it.
I have a Blue guitar, my own brand guitar, which is handmade, which you cannot buy in a shop because there's only a few there. And these actually have the dirt. My niece, she is doing the aging, and she has a special mixture of dust cleaner, meets cigarettes, meets something, and to get an authentic dirt was quite a process. I can do a post maybe next week for you guys. I'll just do a post because then you can see it. And then I put my real one next to it, and you can see that it's so dirty. You cannot fake it. The problem is if you try to do something extreme artificially, you notice something is not right. So you can only do it to a certain extent, and then it's kind of, that's a fake. so she's trying to get close to it, but she has to improve on the skills with the dirt and the distressing, how to make it more authentic. Anyway, good. Do we have questions at this point, please? Yeah.
What kind of string gouge are you using?
I use 9 to 46, which is actually, this is a mixed set. The standard set would be 9 to 42 or 10 to 46. And one set. In my early 20s, I played piccato strings because Ritchie Blackmore played them. Ritchie Blackmore was my big hero, okay? So piccato was this, I heard, maybe he played something else, but you know, you are young, you believe everything. So somebody said Ritchie Blackmore plays piccato strings, so I played piccato strings 9 to 42, I guess it was. Maybe one string was different, but this kind of thing. So, and I was a session player in the studio already at very young age, 17. This is why I bought my real Strat, because I needed a better guitar than anything else. In the studio, you hear the truth. It's like on stage, everything is loud and might be okay, but in the studio, if the sound is the most important thing, okay, so, and I met my guitar studio hero. We have a German guitar player called Peter Weihe. Nobody knows him because he never played live. He only lived in the studio. And he's kind of the German Steve Lukather without being on stage. But have you heard Bonnie M? That's all him. Yeah. UK Mickey Riley, that's all him. And so for me, this guy is my hero when I'm thinking about session work as a studio guitar player. And I was young, 20 something, and I met him in his own studio in North Germany. I'm from the south, so a very long trip, very special trip. And he was explaining a lot very important things to me. He introduced me to his amp collection. He said, you have to have a Vox AC30, and this is why. Plug in, shrang, shrang, shrang. And I understood, oh yeah, I have no AC30, now I buy one. Because I could hear what he has done with this as a tool. He made me buy the Vox AC30, he made me buy another Fender amp. I had some Fender amps before, and so because he was like a professor that could teach on experience. It's like, if you do this kind of job, you need this. He said, you need Les Paul, you need the Strat, you need a Telecaster, you need an AC30, Fender, a Marshall, and then maybe a Soldano or something like this. This was back in the days, and this guy is like 100 yes or fuck off. This guy is like in the studio, you cannot go, it's maybe okay. No, his mindset is 150% correct or not usable. This is, by the way, we are good friends now, his problem today, because he cannot relax. He can only deliver 150%. And I'm kind of a live musician. I can have fun, go on stage and jam with him. And he needs to be always the 150% guy. Anyway, so there is always a good side and a bad side of it. But when I was 20, he said, boy, you buy these strings. And he gave me a set of Ernie Ball hybrid slinky with the 9 to 46. That's good for you in the Strat. I have not changed ever since because he was my hero and I believed him. And now I'm so used to it. For me, the advantage is because I have thicker lower strings, when I dig in hard. that stays in tune. When the strings are thinner, they go sharp, a little bit easier. Good advice from a studio player. On the other hand, the thinner high strings, they're easier to bend. So especially if you do So, I don't know, it works for me. Simple as that. More questions?
Do you have high action?
This one was set up by somebody else. I have medium action, to be honest. This one is too low. I can show you what happens when you have medium action like this. And this is a vintage radio, 725, okay? This one is a little bit too low. That's too low. And I mean, of course it plays easy, but on the Strat, it needs to be medium to me. There are certain blues players who don't like any fret noise. It has the knack, which is, if it's too high, you don't get that. So I like to have it no buzz, no rattling when I play soft. So, and this one is a little bit too low. On this one, I think it's perfect for how hard I play. That's a personal thing. If you have a soft pick, it is different for you. And of course, it's different from what you expect. I want that extra fret noise. That's part of a tone that is also there. I love anything you can do with the guitar, extra tone like here, all that. And also the fret noise. I can control it. As long as I can control it. And then, of course, I try to adjust it to have it at the right point where I expect it to happen. This one is a little bit too low. I mean, bing, 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 done. Yeah. There was another... How many?
How many of those vintage your signature models you have? And how different are they from each other?
I think I have 3. And that goes back to also the prototypes. Because I started with the white one, because this is when they approached me. Then I did a project which is called Blug plays Hendrix. And I wanted to have a Hendrix Cosmetics. And I approached Vintage and said, hey, can you guys make me such a Monterey style looking guitar? And they said no. And then I said, okay. Then I ordered a plain body and a reversed headstock and I made it myself. And I had somebody hand painting this cosmetics on that guitar, and I had 2 of those made for my band, for my Blug plays Hendrix band. And then I had a German magazine. I was doing kind of teaching on a DVD. Guitar was the magazine. And we did an episode on how to play Hendrix. Clever, because there was my band, there was the magazine, and there was the guitar. And then people asked me about that guitar. Where can I buy it? I have only 2. I have one, my main guitar, which is P1, and then there was a P2, handwritten here. And these, so P2 is gone. Somebody wanted to have that. But what I did is I asked Vintage, can you do it? I have people asking for that. You can do business, whatever. And they said, no. Okay, then I said, fuck you. I buy 80 pieces, bodies and necks, and have somebody make that for the people, because I was thinking how many people asked me for that guitar. And this, by the way, was before Fender did that reverse whatever, or this kind of cosmetics. It was so, and we sold all the 80 guitars. And then Vintage said yes. Yeah. So what I have is the P1 prototype of that, and I think it's a standard white one of that, because there has never been a prototype. That was always Vintage. And I have one of these like it's now from the factory.
interrupted by the show you've just made, so I've edited the video like that.
Okay.
But the part we've talked before is the first part, then there's the
show.
whole show.
And then, now it's the after show party.
Then the after show party, where is the bitches?
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. So, okay, first question of the after show is, what is your impressions?
About here?
About here,
yeah,
about the people.
I was very excited about that people know me over here first, and I was very happy that people showed up and had such deep questions. You know, it was not like a stupid school class, which is also nice, but it's like very knowledgeable people that actually enjoyed what I did, so it made a lot of sense. Okay, so now my impressions. Yeah. Because when we finished the first part, we were talking about different guitars playing differently, but we started from the point actually when you were saying when you bought your first Fender Stratocaster, the one from 61, you were thinking the players, you needed it to play like your players. Yeah, it's a player guitar. It's a player. That was very modest, I need to tell you, because the way you play the guitar
is a jaw dropping. Man, I knew you can play. I've checked out your videos. You know, I know your story a little bit, but seeing you live, not on YouTube, like you said in the presentation, is totally different. It's totally different thing, and the way you control the guitar is you can play on a shovel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is what I admire at my heroes. You know, if I watch Stevie Ray Vaughan, if I watch Jeff Beck, if I watch, you know, Ritchie Blackmore, they can play, or whatever, Eddie Van Halen. You know, he can play on anything, and again, to watch such an artist in a real life situation makes such a difference. And this is what I can tell to anybody: go and watch live concerts, because this is where you can feel the music. This is where you can feel the guys. You can feel the person, and this is what it's about. I mean, how many notes? Everybody can play fast. You know?
Not me yet. In a year time, I went for lessons.
Yeah,
actually.
but that's not the criteria anymore, I think. You know, for me, it is. When I was seeing Michael Landau at the Baked Potato, a very small club in Los Angeles, I was seeing maybe the best live concert ever in my life. Because it was magic. It was the guy, and I was sitting like almost as close. He was just 2 meters away from me. And I was hanging at the bar, and he was doing his thing. And I had a similar experience.
So how big the television is in front of you, it's not going to give you the same impression like you standing in front of the guy in a small club, even bigger club or anything like that.
Yeah.
Coming back to this point actually where you were talking about young guy, 11 years old, making your own hi-fi to build the guitar amplifier.
Yeah.
I know that you got huge collection of amps.
By now.
I know you got like very old plexis and amplifiers like that. What was the first amp you were playing, and what was the first real amp you were playing?
So the first amp I was playing was homemade, my own transistor bullshit, terrible nightmare amp with homemade cabinets out of the shelf from our bathroom where the towels were in, because it was fitting a 12-inch speaker. So I annexed it. My parents, they disappeared and there were some speakers in it. So and I had 2 of them, 1 by 12. So this was the thing, and I came to the point in a rehearsal with my first school band, this is not it. And then I started to ask around what is a good amplifier, and somebody at that time said Santana plays a Mesa Boogie. So I had to have a Mesa Boogie. This was so fucking expensive back in the days.
Still is. Even more maybe.
Yeah. and I found a way how to get a Mesa Boogie, because I did a job for somebody that had a hotel, was building a huge hotel with like 200 beds, and I got a job installing all the radio clocks, the alarms for, you know, bed left, bed right. So every room I was getting, you know, to the bed console, whatever it was, get this out, had this machine to cut the hole for the radio, vacuum the whole thing, you know, mount the whole thing, put it in place, other side, next room. I think 200 radio, and I made a little profit on it, and it took me the whole summer break at school, 6 weeks, to do the job. But after this, I had the money for a Mesa Boogie.
Okay.
And I bought a Mesa Boogie MK2B, which was the only thing available at that time in Germany, because they were so rare. And then I had that amp, and it was a good amp.
Did you like it? Actually, was it the sound you were expecting? What was it?
Actually not. I found out the clean sound was okay and the high gain sound was good, but it was not big enough. In the studio, I found out that the Mesa MK2B was too mid-rangey. So, next thing is I started to modify that Mesa. So I had that Holy Grail Mesa and reduced the gain, increased the low end, changed the frequencies, and built in my third channel that didn't exist on that amp, and had reed relays to switch it. So this was then my next project, and that amp was well pretty good. And then of course there comes the time where you found out this was not even big enough, and then I bought my first Marshall.
Okay, so you're rather Marshall guy than Mesa Boogie guy? Rather British sound than American one?
And then with the Marshall I found out I'm a Marshall guy. Because this was exactly the horse that I wanted to ride. And it was the wild animal, and it was so big, and it had the whole thing fascinating. And that's why I have such a huge Marshall collection, because every Marshall that was interesting to me was fascinating me so much that I had to buy it. And then I learned from comparing the Marshalls what is the difference in tubes, 5881s, EL34s, KT66, whatever Marshall used, and they probably didn't pay that much attention to it. But I was, because what is the difference from this to this to this? I had, I think, 5 or 10 50-watt plexis and about the same amount of hundreds. I bought and sold and traded, and I now have 5 each, kind of.
5 each model?
Yeah, 5 50 watts. And
okay.
I'm talking plexis without master volume. Because the stuff with master volume is not the real fascinating animal for me. I have a few of those too, but 50 watts raw as can be Marshalls, plexis, or like the JMPs, the early ones. Yeah,
but you need the space to crank it up.
Well, I built my own silent cabinet at home to be able to do that. So I have a construction of a double wall.
So you mean like some kind of ISO cabinet?
Yeah. I've done this 30 years ago.
Before it was like modern and fashionable.
Yeah. I just had a problem, and as I started to record at home for other people as well as a session player, I had to build that in a house where normal people were living. I built this under the roof. So I was living on the first floor, and the next neighbor was underneath. So this was on top. But the construction was...
So you you've used the construction of the building to build your own ISO cabinet?
I put it under the roof, so to be as far as possible from the next human being.
From other people?
Yeah, and I have made my own construction with like very fine sand, with a double wall construction, and the whole thing was sitting on tennis balls for dampening. So the whole thing was 500 kilograms.
Oh gosh.
Sitting on tennis balls, double wall construction. So this was the way how to crank a Marshall, but living in a normal house without, and still having neighbors.
Okay, so is this doing the job now?
Only partially.
Is it close to the real thing?
This is 16 of my cabinets, which my main cabinet is a Stax 1970, which was always in my ISO cab at home. That's the cabinet I recorded all my stuff. Sometimes I took off or out this cabinet and put in my Vox AC30.
Ah, so you mean it was like the box for the whole cabinet? So it wasn't the whole cabinet itself. You could swap the cabs inside. Okay.
And even combo amps, so a 4x10 super reverb. It was big enough to have a full 4x12 in there. Smaller is always possible, but it was so big that a 4x12 had enough room. And so in my studio, I separated the electronics from the cabinets, because the cabinets were all sitting under the roof to be exchanged if needed, and the electronics were sitting in my studio, like I can plug in to
So
this.
like Vox AC30
Yeah.
was the chassis
Yeah,
were taken
only
out of the,
chassis. Yeah.
of
I have
the,
tons
of
of
the
pictures
amplifier.
from my from my old studio days at home.
Was it covered with anything? Not
Oh.
to get like electrified or
Don't touch it.
don't touch it.
Yeah.
It was a special room just for the chassis.
No, it was a special corner, but it was actually my living room. I was a pretty non-compromise living.
So how many of this, I don't know, of this experience is put inside of the Blue Box speaker emulator IR by Blue Guitar at the moment?
This all my cabinets, and this is all the sounds that I was using in my session musician days. I mean, this is the 1957 Tweed Deluxe, my speaker. I did my own recordings of the IRs, and I know the amp, and I try to make this sound and feel like the cabinet. So that's part of the Blue Box, sure, yeah. And I still. The funny thing is, the other day I started to record a new album for a project with Ben Grenfeld, a guitar player from Finland, Blug Grenfeld Englin, and since I still have that ISO cab and the original cabinet, I thought, hey, maybe let's go back for the original one and use that Neumann tube mic and whatnot. And I found out that nothing was sounding as good as this one.
Okay.
Why? I was thinking about this. Well, I made the original cabinet, but when I finished the product, I thought, I can have a little less of this bass maybe. So I tweaked this, and so I kind of idealized my cabinet.
So this is boxed with the IRs. It's not like any kind of filters, anything like that. It's a
IRs.
modern
Yeah.
IRs made by yourself.
Yeah, but it has also an analog circuitry that does the mic position. And this clip here is a soft clip. This is all analog stuff that makes something. And of course, when I touch something, I voice it the way I like it. And therefore, it's not just my IR. If I give you my IR for some other IR loader, you can recognize the cabinet. But there's some, I would call it butter, that
Spice or anything, something like that.
which is also in the Blue Box, which I simply tweaked when I finished the product Blue Box, because I wanted, it's good when it's a bit spongy, and it does not need to be that clean. And other IR loaders or speaker simulators, they are simply spot on clean, or they have an algorithm to do that. And my algorithm doesn't exist. I just have an analog circuitry that does something, not too much, but a little. And then I have a digital part, which is just the IR. And the combination is the Blue Box. And so it has a touch of a character of its own. But
So now coming to your amplifiers. How many of those Marshalls, Mesa Boogies, and whatever you have, how many amps you have?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay, that's a good answer.
I guess maybe 20, maybe. I don't know. Over my entire life, I owned a lot more, but I think I have 20.
20 at the moment.
At the moment.
Okay,
yeah.
so how many of those amplifiers are in here? What is that all about? Why did you make it so small? What's unique about it? What's nano? Tell me about your amplifiers. Amp 1, it's like what, how many years already on the market?
2015 we could see the first ones.
Because it's not so popular in Poland.
No, because I never had a distributor in Poland. In the UK, you've been to the UK, it's
Yes,
more popular.
It is more popular.
Because that's also, when I founded Blue Guitar, I needed, outside of Germany, where people know me, I needed another international country. And I thought, the UK is pretty close. So my first introduction of Blue Guitar and the MP1 was the UK. So I got international press. And the first thing I have done is I had a real band, a 3-piece band with Mel Gaynor on drums, the guy from Simple Minds, black guy, muscles like this, the loudest drummer that I could find. a bass player.
Okay, to prove that's loud enough. Okay.
We went into the music store, and after the first song, there was no question about if this is the real amp, because people were like, "Oh." So, and I didn't have much to explain afterwards. You know, this was the best. And I've just recently found on the internet the old tour dates, and we went everywhere. I played in bars, I played in all the music shops, the smallest, the bigger ones, and in pubs. We simply did a tour. So, and after this, a blue guitar existed in the UK.
Where did the idea come from?
The idea...
why so small?
Well,
why did you make it like that? Why, if you are the guy who really loves
tubes,
huge amplifiers, and you know, like the amplifier doesn't only play, amplifier as well looks.
Yeah.
You know, if you get half stuck with Marshall, Mesa Boogie or whatever, it makes you better guitarist straight away.
Of course, because
you can see it. You know, it's somewhere on the pedal board.
No, this. I mean,
why?
Well, this is not Ingwie style. This is not more is more from the cosmetics.
Okay.
Well, for me, mentally, it was a very easy thing because I had achieved all the rest. I had all the magic amps, and I had access to like the most sought after amps, dumbbells and stuff, and I didn't buy them because I didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
People, they are good amps, but not for me, so I didn't buy them. If they were good for me, I would have bought them because I was crazy and I had all the excuses. So, but after having a collection of amps and being, there's a story. When I was with Tic Tac Toe, the last big band, I had the guy that picked up my gear at my place, at my studio, and I didn't touch my amps and my 4x12 cabinets. The only job that I had to do is play the guitar and complain about the food and the catering and, you know, and play the rock star. But after this, I came to the decision that I don't want to do that hired gun job anymore. Because prices went down, and we played as an opening up act for Michael Jackson. It doesn't get any bigger; it only goes downhill. So, and after being there and having the collection and everything, I decided, wait a minute. I now make my own music. Where I played some songs, found my own band, and start from small again. So, and then I had my 4x12 and my fucking heavy tube head. And this was no fun. And I had a convertible car with 5 musicians and fully loaded of shit and gear. And this was no fun. The first thing I've done is I bought a convertible car. So I got rid of all the fellow musicians that had to drive seven.
You mean like a cabriolet?
Cabriolet, yeah. So I bought a cabriolet, and this. So I have only one person in my car, which is way nicer to talk to when driving to the gig, and the space was limited. So I replaced my 4x12 with my own handmade 1x12 cabinet, which was not Blue Guitar or using Kettner. It was my personal solution. Now it's called the Fat Cap with Blue Guitar, but this was my cabinet for years when I started the whole thing, to replace a 4x12 cabinet that fits in my cabriolet. So, and then after a while with my heavy tube amp, 13 tubes, and the discovery of a few phenomena, I thought, you know what? I don't need the heavy transformer. I can have a switch mode power supply that works everywhere in the US.
Exactly.
This is internet. Any power outlet on this planet will make this amp work and sound exactly the same. AC/DC, for instance, they have their special Kichu Sui Japanese 5,000 euros power conditioners that the Marshall, the Holy Grail Marshall, sounds like AC/DC, because if you plug it into another outlet, the magic will be different.
Do you believe in that?
Yes.
Is it true?
It's true.
Okay.
I have tested it. I have tried it at home because you can adjust it. I will make an episode on my channel about that. And the Marshalls are critical. What's even more critical is Fender amps. I didn't thought that. But if the voltage is too low, the magic disappears. 5-10 volts difference watch it in the future. I have recorded it already.
You're making me buy another stuff.
Anyway, but, so I learned about that, and this is being a proper solution, saving the big transformer, replacing with a small one, and having a better power supply. So the next thing I learned is the power amp in my Marshalls. They needed special tubes. You know, if you have EL34s, I wasn't happy with certain brands. Then you wanted those Chinese ones or the RTF ones from the DDR, the East Germany, because they were closer to the Mallards. And then I had a tube collection and you know, all this magic. And then which one do I like? And then I learned that a Class D technology, when combined with other things, can get there. So, and bits and pieces came into place, and I thought, ooh, I could AB, and I could find that I don't need that special transformer and that tubes, because I can do it. So, and then about preamps, when you listen to my vintage channel, there is my vintage Marshall. And it's like, there's another phenomena that I learned about, and which is in here. And then I had a prototype. The first one, for people that know my Hendrix DVD from 2010, there's a Blug plays Hendrix DVD. I still had the original Marshall on top of my 4x12 because I wanted to look cool.
But you play this on the video.
I had
hidden somewhere.
Yeah, it was big. It was huge. It was a white plastic box. You can see it on the thing, and this is also on the record. I wasn't sure. I had two. I split my 4x12 cabinet, so I have the Marshall and the MP1 prototype. But I know that was magic. So then I thought, that's something. Then I took it to the next level and made that big plastic box smaller. And then I played some gig in Belgium where nobody knew me. Usually when I play in Germany, people know me and then ask about gear and stuff. And this was a private party of the guy who was running the Europe business for Chucks, the shoes. Anyway, private party, a lot of loaded people with too much money and stuff, but rock and roll fans. And I had my tube amp, and behind my tube amp I had a small version of the MP1 prototype. Nobody noticed, not the band members. So, and this was the point where I knew I will make this real, because I wanted to get rid of the weight, the size. And what happened next was I kind of went for another 2 years and made this into a product, and told nobody about it. And this was back in the Frankfurt days, when Frankfurt was in March or April. And my last concert in December, I played in a small venue, and I had already the prototype sitting on my pedal board, but in a black sack, like, you know. So, and
to cover what it is. Yeah.
Nobody could see it. So, and I told him, this is my new. I have a new overdrive pedal there, and I played the gig. And then, when it came to the encore, I switched off the amp. Like power gone. And
the one which was standing behind you, pretending
to. Okay. This was the real tube amp that was still plugged in, but was not even used on the whole concert. So everybody, you know, small club, and the amp was in the back, so nobody could really see if the cables were plugged in. Of course, in the front I had a cable plugged in, but going to nowhere, and the speaker cable was not even plugged in, so it was kind of only standby and stuff like that. People didn't care because they were coming for the music. A few guys in the audience in Germany were checking it when I simply switched it off
So
He's playing from playback.
exactly, magic. So, and this was the time I said, so in next March, whenever that fair was, I will show you something. So, and this was the introduction of M1.
So how many models do you have already? There's
2. It's actually, there's a silver one, also there's one with a silver housing, which is the Mercury called now, and this is the Iridium. The first amp that I had, they had no name. It was simply silver, so people call that silver. And the Mercury is kind of the first one with a better reverb and tweaked channels. I think the first one is still good, and some people even prefer that, but I voiced the Mercury a little bit more to the average taste. The first one was more my personal taste, and the Mercury that I just played today is still my taste, but has a bit more range to the average guy.
And there's one new one coming next year, Amp X.
Well, this
right?
is Amp X is coming, but this is a totally different animal. This is kind of analog, digital controlled amp. It's something that brings both worlds together. The full analog tube feel and sound, but with the digital performance, usability, speaker emulations. There's like 5 blue boxes in there, and you can load your own and dynamic IRs, and I created algorithms to make IRs dynamic based on this, but to the next level. And so this will be my masterpiece.
Sounds like the ultimate job or something, you know, like
it is the end,
my masterpiece, you said, yeah.
Yeah, it's the end of a 40 years journey to this product. And the result will be that I can reproduce amps or create my own amps on that Amp X. Can be a 57 Tweed Deluxe or a 64 Vox AC30 or modern, you name it, whatever you want. I have to do it. It's not a profiling device or capturing, but this amp is capable of reproducing it, but I have to craft this and my team, because this is, and this then will do everything, like also the tone controls and the stuff, because we simply rebuild this amp on our platform or create our
Sounds
own.
like a huge thing.
This is
3 years you need to play it and to figure it out everything, and actually to set it. You know, there's so many options probably.
No, for the people, it's simply something that they kind of know from a modeling device. They have different models. They can do their presets. They have everything in one box and blah blah blah. For me, I'm 3 years late. I showed a study in 2020. Now it's 23. And it's still not there. In 24 January, I will tour with it. Then I will go to NEM, and then I will probably ship the very first ones, hoping they will not go up in smoke.
Gotcha.
But I'm totally excited because that's, for me, it's that journey from the tube amps to the modern world, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay, I need to tell you something. The way you play, again, some people would never believe that you were not using the real tube amplifier today on stage. The musical dynamic you were talking about was
only
so wide and so high as well. You know, you were everywhere with your sound.
Yeah.
But when you were playing a little bit, you know,
Soft.
softer, when you were using this treble beat on your guitar,
it was still there.
It was still there.
Like a vintage Marshall, cranked. I didn't invent that. I just learned it from there, and I kind of transferred it into a usable, manageable format. Environment. Also on the sound level, because if I would play my original Marshall, it's an experience, but it's like nobody allows you to do that unless
silent stage.
Yeah. But I grew up with that, and I admire this kind of sound,
and this is my inspiration, and that's actually the level. I'm not doing anything lower than this. Why should I? Because I have the original amps at home, and I'm not going on stage with anything that is not as good as what I have. I mean,
what is your standard?
Yeah.
You don't want to
Yeah.
go below the standard. You just
No.
want to at least be on the same level.
Yes.
Or maybe even do it a little bit better
Yeah.
in some way for your own needs. Approach.
Yeah.
I can't wait to test them, to be honest with you. So,
you
you
should,
know,
yeah.
first thing when I come back home, I'm going to write an email to you, and hopefully I'm going to test all the stuff you
Sure.
got. Because like I said, it's not so popular, it's not well known in Poland. So let's try to change it.
Always welcome.
The last question is, as well, I need to tell, where you were doing your presentation, you've already answered many questions that I'm asking. But when you were talking about your car, I was so surprised. I was like, is the guy watching my videos? Because the last question I always have for my guests is, what are you driving?
Okay.
So I know you said the price of your car. Tell me what it is.
Well, it's a BMW 3 Series, I think 2012, and I paid not much. It was I bought it used during the COVID times, when even the shops had closed. So I bought it private, and the seller was a couple, and the lady, she wanted to drive the Mini instead of the 3 Series convertible. She found that looks cooler, and she wanted a Mini. So that 3 Series BMW was sitting in the garage for too long. So the what is it? Not the compressor. The
Battery?
no. The thing that turbo. The turbo.
Charger.
The charger wasn't used enough, so they had to get a brand new one before they sold it with 70,000 kilometers, which was nothing for a 10-year-old car. So I had a 10-year-old car
with new turbo.
With new turbos, only 70,000 miles on it, and not really clean like nothing. So that's me. It's very practical, and I love the car because it drives up to 250.
Wow!
And
you cannot drive like that in Poland.
Yeah, it has 6 speed. I'm not. When I go home from concerts at night with adrenaline, sometimes I drive fast when there's nobody on the motorway. During daytime Germany, traffic jam, Stau, no good. But at night after a gig, that's sometimes when I use it. But only when I know the road and stuff. I didn't have a car crash ever. I mean, I had one when I was 20 and one when there was some rain, but I'm not a crazy driver. I'm pretty safe. So my insurance is as low as can be.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to talk to you.
Big pleasure.
It will be a pleasure to test your stuff. Thanks a lot for coming for coming to Poland. Thanks a lot for a nice presentation and for your guitar playing.
Thank you.
Again,
Thanks
beautiful.
for having me. Yeah. And
thanks for Piotrek for letting us do in this interview as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cheers.
Piotrek.
Thanks
Cheers.
a lot again.
Good.
So the secret is Thomas Blug as well was a huge innovator and designer at Hughes & Kettner amps. So if you know Triumph, he made it. Triumph is one of the most recognizable metal amplifiers in the world, and that's Thomas Blug's ideas as well. Like I said, I'm hoping to test his amps very, very soon. Let's wait for it. And now I will switch to Polish. Dziękuję Wam bardzo za wszystko, co robicie dla kanału. Dziękuję, że oglądacie. Dziękuję, że chciało Wam się wysłuchać tej rozmowy po angielsku. Mam nadzieję, że napisy przetłumaczone przez YouTube były o tyle dobre, że ci wszyscy, którzy angielskiego w jakimś tam sensie nie rozumieją, no to te napisy im pomogły. Fajnie, że taka opcja się pojawiła. Nie będę ukrywał, że no liczę na to, że YouTube wykorzysta sztuczną inteligencję i będzie można włączyć tłumaczenie filmów takie, że ja już będę mówił w różnych językach. Podejrzewam, że najpierw będzie to przetłumaczenie właśnie na angielski z różnych języków i wtedy filmy być może będą docierały do większej ilości osób. Natomiast no bardzo liczę na to, że w przyszłym roku to ta sztuczna inteligencja, to AI będzie działała właśnie tak, że no, filmy będą z automatu tłumaczone. Jakby jeszcze zaczęli tłumaczyć te wszystkie stare, no to już w ogóle byłoby super, ale liczę na to bardzo konkretnie. Dziękuję Wam bardzo za to, że obejrzeliście. Oczywiście dziękuję wszystkim moim patronom, dziękuję wszystkim, którzy kanał wspierają na różne tysiące sposobów. Dziękuję wszystkim, którzy robią coś do tego kanału, poza tym, że już zalajkowali, już subskrybują, już oglądają, już komentują, że robią coś więcej. No jak wiecie, to idzie ku lepszemu, wszystko się tutaj rozwija i kanał, jak widać, też zatacza coraz większe, coraz ciekawsze kręgi. Jesteście naprawdę mega. Propsiory, bardzo dziękuję. Mam nadzieję, że rozmowa się udała. Bardzo chciałem podziękować ekipie Źle i Tanio oraz Olkowi Kwapieniowi. Jeszcze raz dzięki dla Riffu za to, że zaprosiliście mnie tam, ażebym mógł spędzić ten miły wieczór. Była ze mną mama, którą bardzo serdecznie pozdrawiam. Końcóweczka z niemieckiego muzeum, nie pamiętam, Zenscheisen, coś takiego to się nazywa, ale Concord tam jest, dojdziemy do tego Concorda również.
Zemsta Zombie 2, Ford Model A Coupé. Też robiony na takiego hot roda. Fajny, nie? Ten trend zardzewiałych aut tak naprawdę w tym momencie tutaj można sobie zauważyć w macie i w ogóle. Drewniany samochód, no nie, no jest tutaj, słuchajcie, cudów, Scottish Chops Custom 23. Jak zwykle w takich przypadkach oczywiście jest to wielka inspiracja do tego, co można zrobić z designem gitar, po prostu wykorzystując pewnego rodzaju elementy. Zawsze to mówię, tak dosyć na szybko. Tutaj jeszcze Ford Model T, czyli pierwszy popularny samochód, który był produkowany masowo. Tam dzik w ogóle jest złapany w jednym z samochodów. No, lubię takie miejsca.